Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Caffe, Lena. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. And thank you all to everyone who is at home watching. We are so glad to have an audience back here this evening. And we have three amazing poets, as we do every poetry night here at Caffe, Lena. And Carol, if you're at home, we miss you. We wish you were here. But hopefully we'll see you next month. So our first poet this evening is Will Nixon. He is from Kingston, New York, and he has a number of really wonderful works out there. His most recent one is The Pocket Guide to Woodstock, and I'm sure he'll be sharing some poems from that compilation. So I hope that you guys all enjoy the show, and if you are watching from home, be sure to say hi to me in the chat, let me know where you're tuning in from, and be sure to drop a donation to the virtual tip jar so you can help support these amazing poets. All right, thank you all very much for tuning in, and we'll pass it off to Will.
Thank you all for being here, or being out in virtual land. I'm going to read from two older books. The first is called My Late Mother is a Ruffed Grouse. And I'll start with an early poem about being an early person in life called When I Had It Made. When I had it made, I had loose teeth that became nickels under my pillow, a wooden trunk filled with plastic pirate gear, and a black eye patch my mother wouldn't let me wear to second grade. I trapped crickets in jelly jars and fed them grass blades until they died, and joined my collection of dried starfish, rocket stamps, and Canadian pennies. I practiced lassoing with the laundry line and almost caught the squirrel my mother hated for running in the roof gutters whenever she tried to nap. One day, I crawled out from my window and climbed the sandpapery roof shingles to the crest of the house, where I sat practicing for an unsaddled horse and saw things I'd never seen before. The daisy window for the neighbor's attic filled with lamps. The green hills hunched like ants along the horizon, where I bet some Indians still lived. When the paper boy came, he didn't see me spying and didn't know a black lab was racing around the corner after his pants. When Dad walked home, whistling and swinging his briefcase, he didn't see me, almost as high as the crows. He carried his gin and tonic onto the patio, opened the newspaper to the Little League scores, and told my mother in the kitchen the next library lecture was about robins. When I grew up, I decided I wanted to be an angel who watched people like this all day. I saw the first star at the end of the blue sky and didn't come down until the sunset put the smallest clouds to sleep. Here's some more childhood. Dyslexic. The year I learned the hangman's noose, I tied it everywhere. Tire swings, clotheslines, the drawstrings on the rec room curtains that hung my pinky purple during commercials. The doctor says you only want attention because of your little brother, Mom said, cupping her dishpan hands like horse blinders so she wouldn't see my purple finger, my eyelids folded inside out like plum skins. My doctor didn't wear a white coat, didn't depress my tongue with an extra-wide popsicle stick. In a bow tie, always tilted to the side like a stopped propeller, he played checkers and asked me easy questions, like why I felt it necessary to pour dirt down my brother's underwear. Because I like to, I said. Besides, he doesn't care. My doctor never smiled or frowned when I jumped his pieces, sometimes 3 in a row. Do you enjoy pulling his pants down in public? He asked. He doesn't care. He's dyslexic, asked my mom. And what does dyslexic mean? It means, I said, he throws a baseball like a girl. He gets to stay home from school in his bathrobe because he didn't do his homework. He's fat, and he'll eat ants if I tell him to. My doctor suddenly jumped 4 pieces and chose red for the next game. I think it means you should be nice to him, my doctor said. Yeah, I said, but you're not his brother. I have to say, childhood is kind of the gift that keeps on giving. So here's another one. Priceless. I tackled my brother in slow-mo into the mothball smell of the chocolate velvet couch with springs weaker than Slinky's. He refused to fumble. I threatened to bite his fingers like a mad wolverine. Stop roughhousing, Mom said, entering the rec room for her 8 o'clock show, The Galloping Gourmet, with lipstick kisses around her wine glass rim. She never took notes, never made the recipes, smiled too long at every joke, saying, "That's priceless." Afterward, she told me to pull the curtains. Our neighbors must think we're running a nudist colony, she said, even though no one ever walked naked in our house. Drunk, she snored like a horse upstairs in bed. My brother played Alfred Hitchcock, smothering me with a couch pillow until I death-kicked free and decided to teach him to drink wine down in the basement. I checked the freezer for the purple cow heart, bearded white with frost, I'd won in 3rd grade dissection. Mom kept every prize we brought home, saying someday we'd thank her. You could put that heart in a new cow, and it would still work, I said. Would not, my brother said. What I really wanted to know was why such a dumb animal had such a big heart. We drank the sour wine and pissed off the back porch under the yellow bug light. Because he's fatter, my brother sprayed farther, but he wasn't happy. I hope the yard's dry when Mom wakes up, he said. Forget it, I said. Dogs piss here all the time. Yeah, but she doesn't like them either. Same theme. This one is called Easy Out. Jimmy jags through wicked curves, sinkers, spitters, his secret crusher that broke bones. I kicked dirt on home plate, so the fat umpire bent over with his tiny whisk broom, huffing like a bulldog in his padded mask. Make him throw strikes, Coach said. Easy out, shouted the catcher, waving in the outfielders. I practiced my home run swing 3 times, hammered the plate with my bat, making it oomph with dust. I looked up into the dark eyes of Jimmy Jaggs, ready to throw for my head. He belched, loudest in the league, then spat a green wad on the pitcher's mound like a dead 25-cent turtle. When he wheeled with his pitch, I saw justice die. The white moon flew kamikaze at my face. Strike 1, the ump gloated. I rose from my knees. The punks behind the batter's cage flapped elbow wings and balked like chickens. Watch the ball, Coach pleaded. I hated this game. All summer, the bruised clouds refused to rain. The grass tied to the infield was tough as shoelaces. The yellow dirt made my palms bleed with every slide. This time, I swung to kill Jimmy Jaggs for everything. His shaving cuts and cigarette breath, his knuckle punches in the halls, his girlfriends slurping sodas for 7 innings in the bleachers. They believed he once peeled a baseball with his teeth. I swung, but my knees went slack like fishing line that just lost a great fish. The rising fastball smacked the batter's cage, making the chain link sing. Stuck, it glared like a grass-stained eye. I tried religion. I promised God I'd mow the lawn until autumn. I told him what Jimmy Jaggs said about nuns. This wicked curve spun for my face, but I didn't flinch. I would smash the ball into eternity, Jimmy Jaggs into oblivion. Next time, Coach said, but he didn't mean it. The outfielders trotted for the bench, kicking apart white dandelions. Hell, Jimmy Jaggs will spend his life pumping gas, Dad promised. I'm still looking every time I fill up. This is a little older in age, but not necessarily much older in spirit. It's called Fucking Manhattan. Tireless, we ordered home delivery of diaphragm cream by a sad Mexican boy under spastic lights in your submarine green hallway. I tipped him $5 while you blew static hairs off your favorite Marvin Gaye hiccup scratched at college parties with the volume lowered to a whisper so your psychotic neighbor wouldn't throw books at her wall. We slow danced until I lasso tossed your nude bra onto a lamp and you teethed my nipples into tender cones. For the final round, you wore maroon boots with gray gum spots on the soles. I knelt to inhale the scent down your spine to your ass, then grabbed hips like bony handlebars and didn't stop, vowing to outlast car alarms, whooping and yanking. The sports bar drunks spilled onto the avenue chanting, "Go, go, go!" Afterward, you offered Valium, but I preferred to fall asleep naturally, meditating on striped kites cast on the ceiling by street lamps through Venetian blinds. When shouting ruptured the alleyway, I peeked through the blinds at a woman with red impatience on her fire escape hurling down a man's clothes. Khakis, loafers, white briefs that fell like a shot dove. A naked man beside shackled garbage cans caught his clothes one by one and yelled, "Give me back my resume!" I loved this scene. But you'd fallen asleep and stolen my half of the covers for warmth against AC. To work off my excitement, I flipped on kitchen lights to hunt roaches. But smartly, you'd stashed all our dirty dishes in the fridge for morning. To be useful, I laid them in the kitchen bathtub and sprayed scalding shower nozzle water to scour frozen grease. When your cat jumped from her radiator, I noticed in the dark window across the alleyway an orange cigarette tip drawing a curious circle, the woman with impatience watching me, naked and hardening in the greatest city on earth. The Philosophy of Margaritas. 2 slushy green drinks and ice cream sundae glasses, and your friend with her new blonde hair spiky as winter thistle locked mouths with a stranger, as if kissing was a contest like sucking the most from an orange. The wiggly hands of the Mickey Mouse clock clapped at midnight. Thunder Road hit the jukebox for a 3rd time. I grabbed your small hand, hard as chicken bones for such a comforting body, and we burst into the frigid night to breathe cold daggers at icicled street lamps under the Hoboken moon. We swung our unzipped coats like superhero capes. You raised both arms as if signaling touchdown and leaned to the left, leaned to the right, your new aerobicize for sexier stomach muscles. I karate kicked a telephone pole, plopped onto a garbage bag for a beanbag chair, and admired a wooden television console with golden fabric on stereo speakers, dumped like an altarpiece in tomorrow's curbside trash. Hours after bedtime in Yankee PJs, I remembered I watched a TV like this one when Neil Armstrong bound across the moon, an astronaut on planet trampoline. Dad said, "I bet he could hit a hell of a golf shot." Mom said, "Please." Dad said, "A heck of a golf shot." Mom said she'd never live on a planet with so much dust. In those days, when Mom and Dad still talked, I believed when my rocket trip came, I'd be skipping the moon and Mars, shooting past Jupiter. I'd be racing for the stars. Move ahead a little bit. I moved up, grew up in Connecticut in the suburbs, lived in the city for a while. 1996, moved up to the Catskills. This is kind of my poem about the most famous person ever to live in the Catskills, and I use the word live in quotation marks. It's called Insomnia, set in Platte Clove. If you've ever been up Platte Clove, it's this windy road that's closed in winter, and there's a kind of an artist's cottage up at the top, and I was staying there for a time, and that's what inspired this poem. Insomnia. History has failed to record the mice who nested in Rip Van Winkle's beard, or the stinging nettles that grew for 20 summers between his rotting shoes. While Rip snored, chipmunks stashed acorns in his pockets, and spotted salamanders wiggled safely for generations beneath his back. Once, a bear tripped over his chest and stopped to eat his pipe. Wood toads hopped along his buttons, and ovenbirds sang, "Teacher, teacher, teacher," in his ears all summer without prompting any nightmares. When Rip woke and wandered back to town with a rusty gun muzzle and 10-inch fingernails, he became America's first great celebrity of sleep, a cautionary tale of life without a snooze alarm. Tonight, I lay awake and listen to thunder echo in the clove like bowling pins bouncing off cliffs. In lightning, white curtains flash like the ghosts of children I never had. The old maple tree blusters helplessly in the storm. I wonder how Rip managed to forget his unpaid bills, his sullen boy and bitter wife who didn't look up from the butter churn when he closed the door to lead his dog up the mountain for an afternoon of hunting squirrels. He lay down for a moment long enough to sleep through his mortgage. I'd settle for 20 minutes without a mental post-it note. I'm a stunning success at staying awake and lamenting my lost chances. I visualize myself as a rotting log and begin counting toads on my chest moss. I wonder how Rip stumbled across the secret of human hibernation, a trick so wonderful I've paid to watch it in movies about people traveling to the stars. The Life of the Stag. You nibbled sharply on my lips, testing. You just want a girlfriend to help you carry logs. I held you, bony and damp, in my lap, studied the cheek mole you said children love to touch. And go to the movies with, I said. Your black Manhattan jeans lay dropped on the fire rug by my rubber-soled Wolverines. Smoke leaked from the wood stove like a cigarette. In the morning, we snowshoed Cross Mountain. I showed you beech trees graffitied by bear claws the size of our hands, and told you my story. After the Hoboken divorce, I chose these mountains, hung a Cherokee mask by my door, filled my pencil holder with wild turkey feathers, wrote my first ode to porcupines. Then I found my inner Wendigo, named after the Indian spirit in a low-budget movie shot one winter by our reservoir. Half deer, loaded with antlers like bone chandeliers, half human in buckskin leggings, this creature hurtled like an Olympian through the midnight forest, while strobe lights flashed beech trees, fierce as totem poles. And what was the Wendigo chasing, you asked? The same old story, I said, revenge. We kissed, turning me back into a man. And I have one final poem. Between the suburbs of childhood and the Catskills of adulthood, I spent 10 years living in Hoboken, New Jersey in the early 1980s. I started in the early 80s and through the 80s. And in the early 80s, it was really going through gentrification. So this is a poem about that period of time. Sunday afternoons, the river smelled like engines. I slipped through the pier fence, hidden behind the green copper terminal, where commuter trains sat vacant on Sundays. Temping all week, I had no other time to plan out my novel, Hoboken Rising. For inspiration, I brought my cache of dollar paperbacks from Hoboken Vintage Comics, where someone had unloaded college staples, Sartre, Celine, Brecht, Gravity's Rainbow, classics I'd skipped, too busy majoring in misery over girlfriends. Finally serious about literature, I piled old dock ropes into a chair and held pages firm against wind that tossed gulls on wingtips dipped in black ink. I read the first line, but not for the first time. A screaming comes across the sky. What was it about Pynchon's masterpiece? All summer, I couldn't get past his octopus with Pavlovian training. My attention drifted to washed-up buoys trapped in pier-piling eddies. Then the green Fuji blimp nosing overhead, a sky whale bound for Newark. I stood up and waved like an airport runway jockey, pretending to redirect the beast to Bayonne. My wife asked why I didn't read fun books instead. Let's go together, I replied. I'll read Keats to your nipples. But Sunday afternoons, she volunteered at the church shelter, baking lasagna for 40. Literature's no substitute for helping others, she told me. But she hadn't read what I'd write. Sunday afternoons, the river smelled like engines was my first line. The rest could be anything. Thank you.
All right, everyone, let's give another round of applause to Will. That was some really wonderful stuff. I know that everybody at home is really enjoying it as well. So thank you to Will, and thank you to everyone who is here tonight. Thank you to everyone who's watching from home. Our next poet is Mary Cuffe Perez, and she is the author of 6 books, which include poetry collections, children's books, and a book of creative nonfiction, which I'm sure she's going to read some things from this evening. She's also has poems and essays published in a number of places, and she's got a lot of really great stuff out there. So I hope that you guys enjoy. Anyone that is at home, if you are enjoying the show, you can support Mary and Will and Mary by donating to the virtual tip jar. It's caffelena.org/tips. Everything that you donate helps support these amazing poets and helps support us here at Caffe Lena while we are still working under a limited capacity here. So thank you all very much, and let's give a very warm welcome to Mary Cuffe Perez.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really great to be here, to be in front of actual people again, and to think that there's people out there somewhere watching is even more terrific. The first collection I'm going to read from is Poems in November. I've always been a little obsessed with November. It's a month that no one likes. It's kind of bleak, introspective, and I think that's why I like it. But it's also my birthday month, so maybe that's why. Anyway, this collection is kind of a long story. It's 30 poems, and each poem is part of a story about a farm family, a young farm family who inherit a family farm, generations old, and they're trying desperately to keep it viable and having a heck of a time doing it, as you can imagine, the small farms these days. And also, they have a tragedy that's interwoven through this, a loss of a child. So it's some of it's a little bleak, but she is only 3, nose running, hat slipped over her eyes, so all you can see are the bulbs of her cheeks, bright as a woolen coat she wears, and the apples she hopes to catch in the basket her arms don't quite reach around, looking up at you, swinging from a high branch to shake the apples down, the last of the apples down, into the leaves, the grasses, the first fallen snow, but not in the basket below. And that face, that laughing, wind-burned face, looking up, looking up. Okay. He sees his mother there, in the same light at another window, staring into the mist that has stolen everything past the apple tree. Never taking her eyes from the window as if expecting a pattern to rise, she pulls thread through cloth, mending the season gone to shreds, the rooster under the dripping eaves, the low-flying geese aseam to stitch the sky, things as they were when the tractor ran. Behind him, the sky tears itself open. Black, purple-edged clouds blow cold down the back of his neck. Cows hunch over silage, unstirred by the sky that stalks, then devours the day left there. He looks to the house huddled in dusk. Sun fades into the hill behind it, and the clutch of gray limbs could be the hover of smoke. He stops, looks again. No smoke rises from the chimney. To the north, the palest blue is being closed in on. Innocence caught in the darkest intentions, like she was. Would she have come to him had she paused, looked over his shoulder at the land he came out of? None of these are titled. They just kind of go from one to the other. Farms look strong from the road. rooted in rock and mind. Don't let them come inside when they stop for syrup, apples, and pumpkins. Don't let them see that old crone failure fumbling in the webs. Keep talking, smile, wave as they go. They'll not guess what you keep out of sight. As long as a barn stands true, the roadside fence is mended, it's all you have. The fake front of an ancestral farm listing in the wake of the promise you made. The wood stove sighs, pops, firelight fiddles over wall and ceiling and the drift of her body. Shoulder to hip, so well known to him, he could go there, stay there, even be welcome a while. The slope from cheekbone to neck to collarbone, the most beautiful part of her. He can enfold her completely. She is a wound he wants to heal, a fox in a trap he wants to free. But even now she is someplace else. Perhaps that is the most beautiful part of her. Leafless, trees lean into silence. This is what they are here for, not to say what the wind will have them say, but to listen this hour when shadows take a knife edge and draw down their length, slice up forest, cross the road. At this hour, he feels he must beg forgiveness. For what, he shouts, wrenching open the gate that keeps nothing in. For what? Everything that is given is taken. It is the hardest truth to hold. But she does now. Grown round it like a slash in an oak struck by lightning, many years gone. It is now the bend of her shoulders, the crimp in her smile. No small hands of sorrow reach her here. No love bolts from her spine. But this month of doors blown open brings distance stomping in with a cold wind at its back. Even the deer are too big for the landscape they cross. And light, the dagger thrust of light. Okay, let's see. Geese break over the hill, shatter the sky just feet above where she stoops, knees in dirt, setting bulbs. Cold scalds her hands and her nose drips as she fumbles to place each bulb where it must go, 16 to a row, 6 inches apart. Too late, she answers the hungering call, to pull the pull to let go and go. She bows to the earth and gathers the count as geese sets wedge to sky. And the last poem is from a different perspective. It would be someone seeing the farm from a distance. Maybe they're driving by, leaf picking or something, and they're peeking, and seeing the farm as some idyllic place they'd like to be. The first snow of the season sifts secrets through the last leaves of the beech and oak. It feathers the firs and hemlocks, fills the gaps in things. In the last days of November, you return, expecting a change of scene. If you pass just now on the way to a cozy inn, blinking welcome like a forced flower, you might see the man and woman walking the long road to the house and yearn for just this, the daily walk to the mailbox, the keeping of animals, smoke rising from the farmhouse chimney. If the two had a sled to draw behind them, a child, and if there was a dog, a collie, running alongside, then it would be perfect. A scene in a glass globe, just what you have been looking for. The next are little lighter poems. It's from a collection that has never been published or anything, but I keep hoping. It's called Why Meringue Fails, and it's kind of a treatise on all the little failures, all the little things that people think that we should be able to do. We never quite can live up to it. And meringue is one of those for me, so that inspired it. Why Meringue Fails. It's not the eggs, fresh or old as the hen herself, doesn't matter. It's not the temperature of room, pitch of sun, flux of moon. It's not how hard you whip, how long, how accelerated your heartbeat. It's not how judiciously you sift the sugar or when you add vanilla. It's not the shibboleths offered by those whose peaks rise like the sun-kissed heights of the Himalayas. It's not you, dear. Not really. That's ridiculous. Though it is odd. Why you, year after year, produce such a disappointing sloth, leaving the filling bare, a glistening, hopeful yellow, yet oh, so incomplete. Hair. It might have done my mother in. All that tugging and twisting, knotting and braiding, only to have it all spring loose like a sea driven by a drunken moon, eclipsing the landscape of my face. Taking the last of her sanity, my mother retreated to the rest of her life, leaving my hair to me. I found that left alone, it wouldn't fall straight as I imagined, not in any artful sort of way, but took off down the path of insurrection. It's gone that way ever since. So here I sit beneath it, grateful now that it is the last thing to go, since it hides so much of what has gone already, and grateful too for the shade. This next poem reminds me of my southern Aunt Isa. Her recipes contained her. She could be tasted in everything she made. The milk and salt of her, strands of singed hair, the overripe must she added to everything, dribbling her dramas and beads, stirring emergencies into batter, getting caught and having a terrible time getting out, leaving a shoe, an eyelash, a good intention. I grew up picking her out of everything. Surprising grace. I remember the thunk that beheaded the rooster and her loosening patience as she watched life run out around her in circles. The jars she could tighten with one good wrench against anything getting in. The fire she stoked when it had all but got given out, how she could lift you, carry you, break you if it came to that. And the surprising grace of her ruined hands, the care they could take. And the last one in this bunch is Raw Onion and Joy, and this one reminds me of my mother. My father was a gourmet, my mother not so much. He was from California, she grew up poor in Tennessee. She would not glaze or insert cloves. She did not braise, poach, or garnish with apples. She did not dash, drizzle, or marinate overnight, and she never used spices or anything from the East. It would be boiled, most likely, with fat back and collard greens for hours in a cast iron pot her mother left. She ate without benefit of blessings or conversation. A shaker of salt, raw onion, and joy. And the last three poems are recent. Two Black Geldings. The two Black Geldings know what I cannot know. What I know is one will leave. When I call them in, they gallop together out of darkness, themselves darkness, and I cannot tell one from the other until they storm the barn, puffing and steaming, one with a half moon on his forehead, the other a star. They have acres of fields to graze, but they are always in step, their alertness tuned with the same suddenness to what they hear, what they see, far beyond me. They pay attention to everything and to nothing. I lead them in, I lead them out, I feed them, but I do not know them. And when the one left behind looks across the field, down the road where the other has been taken, he whinnies the softest sound I have ever heard. And here's another November poem, late November. I put the fat little hen to roast with carrots and nuggets of red potatoes to go hunting with you. Late November, before the snow, gold and copper woods. What is the color that comes up from under, and those that bruise the depth of a naked heart? Ferns, a terminal green, and the last leaves drifting from oaks, torn up letters, or birds sky falling. I kept such questions tucked within and followed your red and black plaid jacket down the slope where the wild were. Deer, foxes, and fishers, loving the broadness of your back and the way you move through what you imagined, the tilt of your head as if you were listening to what no one else could hear, like deer do. And when you kneeled to touch the ground, seeking the heat of their bodies, I did too. They were here, you whispered, just risen. But they had moved on hours before. I knew, the spark of sun just up in their eyes, the way they gathered, lifted, back limbs to fore, the decision they made. Let's go now. Something is always coming. And the last poem. This poem is, it's like I find poems often come from images that you carry around your whole lifetime and suddenly they become a poem. So this is from 105 years ago. The night before haying. Melinda and I stood straight as soldiers at the far end of the field, watching the kitchen light blinking. We should have been under that light, but the moon had whispered and the grasses were high. A perfect harvest, he said, the timothy ripe for cutting. Each stem fired, seed heads burst, tickling our palms and swishing against our chests, just coming into bloom. Melinda had moon all over her, and I laughed and touched her face to believe it. All we ever wanted was to run. The moon, the grass, the night. I grabbed her hand and we ran, broke apart, ran. As hard as we could through the middle of the field, our bare legs setting the grasses to sing, to gospel, to send bobolinks to flee, save their young. Harvest was the end of things. We cut black, savage craters to the heart of it. No more a perfect harvest, but a scream against the light that spread to the porch, outlining the man who stood there as we struggled for breath, laughing anyway. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mary. That was really, really wonderful. Let's give Mary another round of applause, everybody. And Now, our last poet this evening is Mary Kathryn Jablonski. She is author of the chapbook To the Husband I Have Not Yet Met Yet, and also to the 2019 book Sugar Maker Moons, and she also has had poems published in many, many places. It's really wonderful to have her back here at Caffe Lena, and let's give a very warm welcome to Mary Kathryn Jablonski.
Thank you. Thank you all at Caffe Lena. It's such a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to read with two very wonderful friends. In fact, I'd like to start with a poem that I wrote in collaboration with Will Nixon. We began this poem alternating lines by email, and I kept only my lines, but one of Will's, which is, "Let the travesties of spring be your rescue," which I think is the pivotal line, and I couldn't have conceived any of the others without Will's prompts. It's titled Lacus Veris, and it's from my book, Sugar Maker Moon, which consists of over 30 poems that are titled for seas and lakes on the moon. The translation is Lake of Spring. Trust in your loss and in the return of what you thought lost. Let the burn, let its balm be the bird song. Each day lengthens with or without you. Lose yourself again. If you must, be rescued from yourself. Each blade, each bloom, each egg that breaks with its blood and its blessings unbidden, lets the travesties of spring be your rescue. Lose yourself again if you must. Be rescued from yourself. Let the travesties of spring be your rescue. With its blood and its blessings unbidden, each day lengthens. With or without you, each blade, each bloom, each egg that breaks, trusts in your loss, and in the return of what you thought lost. Let the burn, let its balm be the bird song. I'm going to read some new poems tonight, and many of them exist also as video poems. I hope you'll take my card in the entrance that has on it my website, mkjpoet.com, so that you can see some of these as video poems there. I was given an individual artist grant recently to work on these, and the culmination will take place in September as a full-length film I made with collaborator Laura Frere. 9 of them will be presented in September at the Saratoga Springs Public Library as what I call a video chapbook, which is going to be a film. And they're very different as video poems. I'll give you a little taste of that with this poem titled Nightjar. In the video, it begins like this, somewhat like this. At day's end, the chant rose from the edge of the woods unceasingly, and she remembered how her brother loved this nightjar he heard only once and longed for ever since. Yet she grew increasingly unnerved by the repetition. Like a heartbeat, it persisted, though she never saw the creature. If she thought about it now, she could not even say for sure what he looked like. The one who laments from the edge, whose last note she anticipates, as night holds us in suspense in its will. Minor mischief. Freed from the reverie of watching a burning intention, as father's cigarette formed an ash that dangled half an inch and then an inch from his yellow fingertips, longing for the least distraction following our morning chores. We were motes and chaff, flickering in what little light rode sharp lines through the holes in the tin roof of grandmother's barn, when we slipped through a broken back door to leap from the beams into the darkness and loose straw that received us. Later, picked clean of evidence, we found ourselves in the blaze and buzz of clover. You'd go and strip a willow branch from her side yard, beyond the field, beyond the elderberries, then turn to whip the closest thing at hand. World of Two. I was too young to know better when I put him in a dress. Poor thing. What was his name? My brother would remember. I regret it now, but at the time I pretended he enjoyed it. I had no sisters, only 4 older brothers. What was I to do? I created our own private world, spoke for both of us, and pretended he enjoyed it in his dress, sometimes even a bonnet. There was tea, there were conversations. I meant no harm. He was so handsome, fair, big-boned. It was a world of two. Took him from the barn. I put him in a stroller, held him there with one hand, pushed it with the other. What was his name? All I remember was the day he got away. I scared myself. We were on the screened porch, and he hid beneath the flowered sofa, which, I learned, had wire springs. A button got caught in the coils. The more he pulled to escape, the worse was his pain. Poor thing. I put him in a dress. Not the last boy. I pretended he enjoyed it. I meant no harm. What was his name? All Souls. I woke in the night not once, but twice, hearing babies' voices. Or was it the wind? Twice I tried and failed to decipher what they spoke, these souls in limbo. And fully awake, I called them to me, as I so often wrongly called my brother back when he had gone. And now, on All Souls' Day, his daughter's unborn boy 2 days past due, is maybe deciding when to descend, maybe getting some encouragement from that side, maybe saying so long to other baby souls, finalizing who among the putti is best to serve in this position. You go. No, I'm not ready yet. You go this time. The power went out. Schools were closed. Another brother called to say he lost 2 trees. I woke in the night not once, but twice, waiting. Five easy pieces. 1. His bony, 60-year-old, perfect, pale right foot had a birthmark on the instep, just above the pinky toe. 2. As I covered it in his thickest, warmest sock, he said, "When I was little, Mom told me that's how she'd identify me if I were ever lost." 3. I imagined him, always cold now, barefoot, on a brilliant white sand beach, foam lapping his beautiful feet over and over as he walked the seemingly endless shore. 4. Have you ever been lost? I asked him as he lay motionless. 5. Those are the wrong socks, he whispered. On a mission. The spring following our older brother's death, we didn't say 2 words about it. On a mission. The spring following our older brother's death, we didn't say 2 words about it. But one day, unexpectedly, you called and said you bought a bike. I hadn't ridden in 4 years, you in over 40. So it began that you would call and we would ride. Your cell number, my bat signal. Spring passed and you became much stronger than I was. I'd follow the beacon of your neon as you gained ground on the downhills, madly pedaling out of sight like a 10-year-old boy on a mission. I'd catch up and find you waiting silently near a flock of goslings or a turtle sunning on a limb. You showed me the duckfoot maple leaves and striped young trunks as I called out wildflowers. You got a rear-view mirror so you wouldn't lose me. Every weekend we rolled out. Glens Falls to Lake George was 20 miles round trip. On the feeder canal to Fort Edward, we flushed wild turkeys from the underbrush, and once a rare green heron, fragile as a promise. In 95 degrees, we pressed through rain and thunder at the battlefield. I carried extra water for you, and we ate things we never ate, sweet potato fries and soft ice cream. Rode it all off. We rode until we couldn't walk the stairs and slept and woke and rode again. Then, one late October day following a week of rain, it came. The clocks changed, as did the light. It got dark far too early. You called and said, "Too cold." And just like that, it ended. I put on 3 layers, one for each of us, and headed out alone.